Hi, everyone. Today is the first episode of Global Prospect Summit online podcast. This is in preparation for our Global Prospect Summit Silicon Valley conference on April 26th. Today, we have Lincoln from Stanford University, and we are very honored to have his time and discuss some of his initial thoughts, the idea of sustainability and climate change. Hi, Lincoln. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. We are very happy to be connected with you and also learning about what Stanford is doing on sustainability and infrastructure. Could you maybe very briefly help us understand how do you manage the university's carbon footprint and what are the strategies you have adopted over the years to achieve this mission?
Yes, we've been very proactive about managing our carbon footprint. We actually started back in 2011 when we had a cogeneration plant on our campus that was providing us with electricity and steam, and that cogeneration plant was reaching its end of life. And so we had to make a decision about how to power the campus and heat and cool the campus. And my predecessor, who's a brilliant engineer, was really aggressive in a good way about looking at alternatives. The standard solution at that time would have been just to build another cogeneration plant and burn more natural gas. But he looked at all the options and realized that we could do what we needed to do with hot water and chilled water instead of steam, and that we could use renewable energy instead of fossil fuel to power the system. And so in 2015, our central energy facility, which has just reached its 10th birthday, actually, our central energy facility went operational. And basically what that involves is 2 solar power purchase agreements in California, wholesale transmission rights on the California grid, and then a thermal energy production facility on campus that takes the renewable energy through heat recovery and conventional chillers to make hot and chilled water, which is then distributed around the campus in a closed system of about 50 miles of piping underneath the campus. So instead of heaters or air conditioners in our buildings, we have this hot and chilled water loop that takes care of our campus heating and cooling needs. And as a result, going from gas-fired cogen to this system, we took our scope 1 and 2 emissions down 80%, 80%. So
Wow.
a huge drop in scope 1 and 2 emissions. Also, our particulate emissions went down almost to zero. Our water use associated with energy went down 3/4, 74%. And our costs became much lower and much more stable than they'd been at the same time that our reliability of the system went way up. So it was really a win-win for the campus. And of course, now we're looking at that last 20% and planning very aggressively to take that 20% down to a net zero over the next 10, 15 years or so.
That's very impressive. Do you feel this drive for getting the emission further down? Is it driven more by regulation or driven by the university culture and values or driven by individual engineering spirit or commitment?
I think it's a combination of all three. Obviously, being in California, we're subject to a lot of regulatory requirements around carbon and particulate emissions. So there is a regulatory driver. California is a very heavily regulated state. But mostly it comes down to policy. Our board of trustees, which is our board of directors, basically decided that we should be net zero scopes 1, 2, and 3 by 2050. And so this, of course, goes a long way from a policy perspective of meeting that policy. But the only way you get that done, to your third point, is with a lot of very creative people doing really excellent work to find solutions, often that aren't the usual solutions, the more ordinary solutions, to find an optimal outcome for Stanford, whether it's economics or our customer experience, our user experience, or climate and environment. So it's a great question. It's really all three of those things.
That's great. Yeah. And were you also able to tap on some of the talent or professors on campus, or were you limited to your talents in your own department when developing this solution?
Oh, very much, very much. It was very much a whole Stanford effort. When my predecessor came up with the solution, it went through intensive review from our faculty because it was a first of its kind at scale solution. And they actually made the project quite a bit better through their analysis and their feedback. Now, since then, since the project has been up and running, we've been really using it as a living lab for innovation. And we've had a number of graduate students and professors doing research on the facility, on the buildings that are served by the facility. And we've come up with some really interesting innovations which have made the system even better.
Oh, that's beautiful. And then what are some of the top challenges you have faced when implementing the carbon footprint strategy?
Yeah, I think the first big challenge was back when we were deciding what to do. And whenever you're deciding to do something different, it is a big challenge to help people understand that and get comfortable with it and be willing to make a decision about it. What we did, as I mentioned, was first of its kind at scale. Back then, the absolute industry standard thing would have been to build another cogeneration plant. That was the no-brainer, so to speak, answer at the time. But we decided that we could do things differently, we could do things better. But the change management exercise was tremendous in terms of getting engineering firms around to our idea, getting our professors, our research community that relies on the facility, comfortable with the idea, and making sure that everything worked, and double checking and triple checking every assumption and every model. So that was I think the first big challenge. The second big challenge is that we're dealing with reality, and we're dealing with decisions about priority and decisions about configuration. When we first modeled the plant, we first planned the plant, we had assumptions for the rate of campus growth, and we also had assumptions about the rate of ambient temperature increase, both of which proved to be far too low. The campus is growing faster than we expected, and the local climate is getting hotter faster than we expected. And so we ended up doubling the chilling capacity of the plant after only a few years of operation. We had expected to do that maybe 15 years after 15 years of operation. But because our assumptions in that regard proved to be too low, we ended up using our ability to expand after only a couple of years. And it really speaks to how uncertain our climate is right now, that we're seeing it, instead of moving in a steady curve, we're seeing it move in step changes. For example, a very hot graduation day in June used to be about 85 Fahrenheit, and now it's about 105 Fahrenheit, just over the last 10 years or so. So not a smooth change, very much a step change in those assumptions, and we've had to adapt to that. So now, the other challenge now is figuring out how to keep building on the whole system so that we can heat and cool and power Stanford reliably and cost effectively for decades to come. And so that means everything from the transmission system to our electric distribution system to the amount of chilled water capacity that we have on campus, and how to build that, how to take advantage of the latest technologies and make it as cost effective and carbon effective and effective for our customers, the students and the researchers, as we possibly can. So no end of challenges in that regard.
definitely. But you have a group of problem solvers with you to tackle that. I'm really glad. And
We do.
what are some of the proudest moments you have while working in this role?
I think the proudest moment is actually right now, and that is that our energy plant, our thermal energy plant, is having its 10th birthday in about 2.5 weeks. And it's just extraordinary. Makes me extraordinarily proud that we took these chances, we took these risks 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and we have been operating successfully, whether successfully economically, user experience, carbon. We've been operating successfully for a decade now, and we have had over 20,000 people from all over the world visit the facility to see sustainability innovation in operation and successful operation. And one of the things that we do with that, our website actually has every drawing, every study, every board of directors, every board of trustees presentation available to the world. And by touring people through the plant and by making all of that information available, we're able not just to optimize for Stanford, but also to provide an exemplar, a template for the rest of the world. And 20,000 people through the plant as touring and counting. It just never stops. So I'm really proud of what we've done operationally, but I'm also really proud of what we're doing to show the world a different way to heat and cool.
That's great. There will be our audience from China and from London watching our recording. So hopefully you'll get more requests to tour the plant in the
Oh,
future.
that would be
Bear
great.
with us.
That would be great.
Yeah, this is great. And I wanted to also ask, what are some of the lessons learned from your role that might be insightful or beneficial for other industries or other sectors, for also non-academic entities who might not have, say, the group of talent you have or the amount of budget you have? And do you think the Stanford model is duplicatable for any other industries, or is this quite unique experience?
It's very much adaptable, and that is one of the great advantages of the system. We've had people come and tour the plant from very hot and humid climates, very cold climates. As you probably know, Stanford has one of the more temperate climates in the world. We're very lucky in that way. But this is not just a temperate climate solution. This can be adapted very successfully to places like Florida or places like Southeast Asia or elsewhere in the world where you see a lot of humidity, you see very hot summers, hot and humid summers, very cold winters. This is very easily adapted technology, and that's been one of the ways in which we've collaborated with our academic partners. We've had PhD students actually prove that out for us by running simulations in other climates. And so that's one lesson learned. The other lesson learned is that this is very much a marathon process. Nothing is going to happen quickly. And that's because whenever you innovate, it takes time to get people comfortable with that. But what we're doing is something more. We're innovating in heavy duty infrastructure, literally the beating heart of the Stanford campus. And so the risk associated with getting it wrong is incredibly high. I mean, we spent $485 million back in 2015 to build this plant, a huge sum of money. And so when you're dealing with innovation, it takes a while, but when you're dealing with infrastructure innovation, it takes a long while because the stakes are so much higher and the dollars are so much larger. So that's really been one learning. Whatever you think it's going to take to convince people and educate them and get them comfortable, you should probably double that or triple that because human beings take a while to get around to that. I think the third lesson learned, though, is that going back to the faster campus growth, and the hotter ambient temperatures is that the climate is changing really quickly, and it's not changing in smooth, predictable ways. It's changing in these step changes. And so when you are modeling a project like this, I would encourage everybody to use your hottest, highest growth assumptions as your base case, and maybe even add a little bit to that. It's so much cheaper and more efficient to build that capacity when you're building the original plant than it is to try to add that capacity later. And what we're finding is that later happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Later is a lot closer than we think when that additional capacity is going to be needed. So it's been a very interesting process for us. And as you know, as I mentioned before, we're still studying it, we're still optimizing it. And I imagine that process will continue for as long as the plant is there.
That's very insightful. And moving on to another more relevant question to current affairs, I wonder if you have any concerns about the policy direction under Trump's administration around sustainability and infrastructure.
Well, I think it's the answer is we don't know yet. Things are obviously changing very, very quickly, and we're trying to keep up with that. But I think the one thing that we can all agree on is that the times are very, very uncertain. So we have to be as nimble as possible and as adaptable as possible with this new administration.
Understand. And final question, given that our conference will be hosted in Silicon Valley, Beijing, and London, I wonder if you have any experience or good positive examples you've seen from outside of the US, things that can be of inspiration or strategies or policies that you find very useful that's worth bringing their attention to.
Yeah, I would. When it comes to district energy, thermal energy like this, I would certainly highlight Denmark. The Danes are doing very, very innovative things. In fact, they are one of our big thought partners in how we optimize our system, because it's very similar to a lot of systems in Denmark that do similar things. So there's a lot of innovation there. But what we're seeing now is around the world is the confluence of what's good for the climate with what's good economically. And so what we're seeing now is that the technology is getting to a point where the price is low enough and the risk is low enough that, for example, renewable energy is both the economic right choice as well as the climate right choice. And I think we're seeing more and more of that confluence internationally, where those two lines, the economic line and the climate line, cross. And that, to me, is the best news we could possibly have, that these can be win-wins, economic and climate, and you don't have to be focused on climate in order to do something that happens to be climate positive. So that, to me, is the most interesting thing going on internationally right now.
And yeah, hopefully more organizations and decision making will land on the same conclusion and make the right choice for both economic gain and for our climate.
Yeah.
And maybe just a final question. Do you have any questions you want to ask to our London panelists or Beijing panelists? Anything you have been curious about? We don't have to record this part, but I can forward that message to them and they can get it discussed.
Oh my. I think I would actually, it's less of a question and more of a request, and ask. I would really encourage, that climate change is something that no one is going to solve on their own. No person, no institution, no country is going to solve on their own. And that makes sense because it is a truly global problem. So I would just encourage, whether you're in Europe or you're in Asia, I would encourage people and institutions and governments to, as much as you're collaborating internationally, double it. And I hope some of those emails come my way as well. There is so much that we can learn from each other, and there's so much that we can adapt from solutions that others have tried. That collaboration and communication is really the key to all of this. So I would ask that, publish your results, reach out, collaborate, coordinate research, coordinate operations, learnings from operations. There's just so much great thinking, great people doing great thinking and doing great things in the world. And let's figure out how to knit that tightly together.
100%. Yeah, that's also why we're hosting this conference, trying to connect the resources and the most talented mind. We'll definitely pass on your message to the rest of our audience.
Great.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Okay. No, thank you.